So Ryan's company Flexport helps companies manage their ocean and air freight. You've been running Flexport for 12 years minus a little 2-year-ish break to become a venture capitalist.
6 months break.
Oh, 6 months?
Yeah, it seemed like a long time, but it wasn't that.
Shorter than I realized. To work for Founders Fund before returning to the company. I'm hoping to get to that chapter, but I did just, of course, want to talk to you about Liberation Day. What did you think of it?
Oh, I mean, it's horrifying for our customers. So Flexport is a global logistics company and customs brokerage. We're one of the largest customs brokerages in the United States, and we help businesses clear customs and pay their duties. One of our many missions is to become the largest taxpayer in the United States, which we may be able to do with all these new tariffs coming through. So our customers are really badly hit. You know, you look at these duties that got put in, the reciprocal duties, 34% on China, but people have to realize that's cumulative. So they already added 20% last month or like over the last 2 months. So they got 54%. And the Biden and Trump administrations combined put in, depending on your product, between 7 and 25%. So it's cumulative. So you're at 79% for a lot of products like your sofas will be 79% duty rate if they're made in China. And so, yeah, for some of these companies, for a lot of our customers, it'd be existential kind of life and death decisions over the next, we'll see what happens. A lot of it's out of their control. Some of it is in their control. But, yeah, pretty horrifying. I mean, we're trying to do everything we can to spend. There are some strategies you can do. You can make your product in America, but not a lot of those, like sofas, you won't be competitive if you do that. But there are a lot of other strategies and just helping people figure out what the lay of the land is and allowing people to stay a little bit calm in all of this. Likely this is not permanent. I don't have an inside track there, but I did talk to one of the cabinet members last week who told me that Liberation Day will be the start and not the end of the process of negotiating tariffs and sitting down with countries and working out deals. And we saw already Vietnam and Israel both came to the table and eliminated all duties on American goods this week. I suspect more countries will do that, and there's probably deals to be cut to then reduce their duties, because Vietnam got hit with a 46% duty.
I was going to ask what the biggest surprise was, and if that was Vietnam, because you've been sort of building up your muscle in that country.
Yeah, so we have a big office in Vietnam. Vietnam wasn't a surprise for me. Not really a historical American ally, if you know your history. And, you know, they've been allied with Russia for the last 50 years or so. And so it wasn't shocking to me that this was, you know, I talked to 200 customers in person so far this year, and they all, many of them are producing in Vietnam and told me that, we're not that worried about the duties we produce in Vietnam. And I was like, well, let's see. I expect there to be duties on pretty much everywhere. And that is what we saw. Surprise. I don't know if it's a surprise, but the one that's a really big impact that barely got noticed until we kind of reported it was that they shut down the de minimis program, announced that they will be shutting down the de minimis program. De minimis is what lets you import goods duty free if they're under $800. And that's going away, so you'll now have to pay duties. I think there's an exemption for hand carried luggage. I didn't pay that much attention to that. I'll find out. But when you're traveling, buy less than $800 worth of stuff, or you have to file a customs declaration. So that is going away, not just for China, which we knew was happening, but for the whole world. And what had happened, you have these companies, Temu and Shein are the most famous, but many others, dozens of others that import direct from Asia. 50% of all the world's air freight is now flown as this kind of duty-free, direct-to-consumer shipping. So that's well-known, but what less well-known is that over 30% of all the e-commerce brands, of the large ones, have set up their fulfillment in Mexico and do fulfillment from Mexico when you order goods for like most Shopify websites, or 30% of them or so. It's coming from Mexico. So that's all going away, or at least the duty-free aspect of it. So that was not necessarily a surprise. I kind of thought that would probably happen at some point here in the Trump administration, but it's definitely a shockwave that people are going to have to adapt to. So, yeah, a whole lot of stuff. It's been a pretty busy couple of days.
I bet. I mean, also, obviously, things keep changing, to your point. You know, maybe this is the start. We'll see. I mean, they haven't sort of eradicated. They obviously didn't cut Vietnam a break. How do you communicate with your customers about all of this stuff, and how often? Because I would think you want to be a calming presence, but also talking to them every time there's a change, I would think you're talking to your customers constantly.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Rule one in a crisis is everybody will rally around the calmest person in the room. So try to stay calm, and that was for us, but also for the customers. You're the leader of a company. You can't be freaking out, even if you are inside. Your company will freak out. And so what we did, yesterday we spent the day studying this stuff, learning about it, tweeting about it, reading the rules myself. It's kind of interesting because you have all these customs experts, but like what made them an expert is they put in the time to read the rule. But if the rules were brand new, like they are not more expert than me. I just go read the rule. So I had to go dig in and try to understand this stuff myself. And then when we started to feel like I had an understanding, I wrote a blog post about de minimis that I wrote myself. Here's what's happening. And we were the first, before any news, I had hedge fund guys like texting. We were the first to notice that semiconductors were carved out. I had one of the biggest investors in NVIDIA saying, where are you seeing this? I'm like, it's, sent them the law. So there's trading opportunities in all of this probably. Then we did a webinar. So at midnight last night, I was like, we need to obviously get our customers together for a live stream tomorrow. And my customs team, for some reason, didn't want to do that. If you're watching, if we're recording, that was crazy. I forced them to do so. So at 11 a.m. this morning, we did that. We had 22,300 customers attend to try to figure out what's going on. That was definitely our record. We broke our live streaming platform. We need to get a better one. Couldn't keep up. So yeah, there's a lot of hunger and demand for this about what's going on.
Another thing that you didn't mention, but I've seen you talk about before, that's another thing for you to stay on top of is the how much they're charging China-made ships to come to the country. And what is that, like $1 million per port that before they, so you were talking about like millions of dollars for each ship that causes the whole thing to be incredibly daunting. And then if the ship is even carrying one Chinese container and happens not to be Chinese made, although that's very infrequent because I think like 70% of the ships in the world are made there. So that's,
it's a proposed rule from the USTR, U.S. Trade Representative. Hasn't gone live yet. It's supposed to go, something will get enacted on April 17th, so in 2 more weeks. And yeah, idea is to stimulate American shipbuilding. They're saying they're going to put in a fee for every port call that a ship, whether if the ship's made in China, I think it's $1 million. If the carrier that owns the ship has any Chinese-made ships in their fleet or has ordered any Chinese ships, so even if they're not arriving for many years, so that is all of the world's ocean carriers will get wrapped into that, and they'll have to pay $1 million every time they come, $1.5 million, up to $1.5 million every time they come to the United States, any port call. And the way the ships work is they'll call it usually 3 ports on each coast, so they'll come into the West Coast, they'll stop in Seattle, then Oakland, then LA, and then go on. So that'd be $3 million divided by the number of containers. Now that's what's going to happen if this goes through. And we'll see. I don't know if they're listening or not out there, USTR. What will happen is that the ocean carriers will just skip the smaller ports and just go to LA. That's what they've said they're going to do. So I believe them. Why pay then you just pay $1 million instead of 3. And so that will be pretty bad for jobs in the Port of Oakland and in Seattle. It'll be bad for companies that now you have to pay for trucking from LA all the way up here and all the way up to Seattle. It'll be really bad. You'll see congestion in LA. They won't be able to keep up with the demand. We saw that during COVID. And then, okay, that's all kind of ugly. Then to add to that, they put in this clause, and again, we'll see if this goes live in the final interpretation or final ruling. But they're going to require that U.S. exports travel on a ship that's made in America with an American crew. And so there's only 23 of those container ships in the world right now. And it will require
23?
Yeah, sorry, it'll require 15% of U.S. exports to do that. So there's only 23, and they're by law it's called the Jones Act. So they go from domestic ocean freight has to travel on a ship like this, and domestic ocean freight means Hawaii, Alaska, Puerto Rico, Guam, Virgin Islands, right? And so if it's going between 2 U.S. ports, you can't move cargo on a foreign-made ship. That's the law of the land since the 1930s. I want to say Jones Act, 1920s or 30s. But now they're effectively saying all exports will have to travel. 15% of their exports will have to travel on a Jones Act ship. These ships don't go where the U.S. exports want to go, and I'm all for manufacturing in America and American shipbuilding and all these things. But one thing we know from Asia's industrialization, which they were very successful at, was they stimulated exports. They put in programs to make exporters successful. And if you're kind of handicapping your exports and requiring them to go on a U.S.-made ship, we're kind of conflating. It's like a double bottom line goal here. If you want to, these goals are kind of conflicting with each other. So hopefully they come to their senses before they publish that, but you just don't know.
So I'm sure your customers are freaking out, but you must be freaking out too. I mean, I would think that in the short term, it's good. You're very much in demand because everybody's trying to figure out alternate paths, maybe different places to source things. But of course, if this goes on for a long time, everything just slows down.
We're fine. I mean, Flexport's designed to withstand anything. Basically, we've got a really strong fortress-like balance sheet, great customers who love us, and a long game view. I think we're building technology to make this industry way more efficient. Things that we know are going to be true regardless of what happens and who's in power and what the trading dynamics look like. And people are going to want more efficient trading, more accurate data on where their stuff is and when it's going to arrive, lower costs, like all these different things that you can do with technology. And so we have a long game view there. And then an even longer game view, if you just look at the history of humanity, global trade is, well, it's older than art. It's been around since before the cave paintings. And you can look at that graph. We've got 4% annual growth of global trade since the Mongol invasions in 1200 AD, 4%. So it's looked like this hockey stick curve over 800 years of growth. And if you look at that chart, you will not notice, I should have brought it with me, you won't notice World War II. It's a blip, and God help us, but we're not in a World War II situation here. So our view is that regardless, even if you do end up in that scenario, again, God help us, but you're going to find out that people want to trade with one another. It's part of what makes us human. So you fast forward 10 years, my strong conviction is there will be more trade, not less. And yet Flexport doesn't need there to be more trade. We did $2.1 billion in revenue last year, and we are 0.25%, or probably it's like a multi-trillion dollar market that we're in. So we can grow. Even if the market were to shrink in half, we'd be fine. I'm worried about our customers, though, that's for sure.
Well, yeah, and you've already endured a lot. I mean, I was hearing you sort of recite everything that's happened, like every year that Flexport's been in business, and it was sort of, head turning to think what you've seen already. But I do want to talk to you a little bit about, you're talking about technology. I know that you're talking about AI, I think. You talked to my colleague, Sean O'Kane, a little bit about like 20 new initiatives that you had maybe a month ago. Tell me a little bit about how you're using AI. And I do also have to wonder a little bit about what you're doing with all that data.
Yeah, so I mean, we're about 1% of all the containers coming into the U.S. go on Flexport. I said 0.25% of the market. That's because we're more than just U.S. based. We're in 40. We have 40 offices around the world, shipped to and from 147 countries. And so, yeah, a lot of really fascinating data about what's happening in trade flows, and then the ability to. There's a million things you can do with machine learning and AI modeling on top of this. One is route optimization. Obviously, pick the right this container. Which ship should it go on to get there on time, or which plane, so having that database of all the world's sailing schedules and flight paths, really just taking manual work. So our estimate from looking at our own operations and studying the industry is that for every $1,000 you spend on global shipping a container across the world, about 100 of that is going to the coordination layer, the labor that's what we call it, our industry called freight forwarding. I call it freight email forwarding. These people kind of passing documents around and making phone calls and stuff. So it's about 10% of all of the end cost of shipping. And this year, in the last 18 months, we eliminated 35% of that, of our own time, 35% of all the tasks that are getting completed. That number was kind of flat for like 8 years at Flexport as we struggled to get our hands around these processes and use regular, more traditional scripting methodologies to automate things. And all of a sudden with AI, it's just like this crazy unlock. So we're kind of like automating about 1% a week right now. So yeah, very bullish on the ability. That's why I'm like, I don't, the price of shipping is going to go up and down. There may be less shipping or more shipping, but we know that people will want cheaper shipping. And so we feel very strongly on that. And some of the things that we can do with it. So we're making about 5,000 phone calls a day with voice AI agents, and that'll ramp. We're about to bring it into foreign other languages. So calling factories to ask for documents. We're missing the the commercial invoice, the packing list, other documents. We're about to clear customs. We don't have the document. That's a costly phone call. AI can make it. The receiving side doesn't know that they're not talking to a human. We call truck drivers. We have 400,000 truck drivers using the Flexport mobile app. We don't have enough loads to make all of those people want to open the app every single day and find a load. But now the AI will just call them and tell them, hey, I've got a, and you listen to the call, you think it's a person. And that gets better every 3 months or so. We see massive improvements in the quality of those phone calls. So yeah, just a million use cases and ones that I wouldn't have thought of. Like the team is just like a lot of bottoms up innovation where I felt like 5 years ago, like our hackathon was like a third of the ideas were something I told someone to try and do. And now it's like, I don't know, maybe I get one team to try my idea, but they have their own ideas.
And your customers are pretty receptive to this automation and these calls that they're getting. And
we don't call customers with AI. I'm like super skeptical on that. It'll probably get there in a few years. We're calling factories, warehouses, vendors. If you call us, you're talking to a human. Actually, something I pride ourselves on. You call the Flexport number. I don't know about 24. I was cautious to test this, but yeah, you could try it after a call. The human will answer the phone. I hate it when I've run business. I've been an entrepreneur for 25 years. And every company I ever started if I hire someone to answer the phone, within 30 days, they come back to me and say, Ryan, I think we should put like press 1 for sales, press 2 for service. Like humans hate answering the phone. But I tell them, no, that's why, I hired you to answer the phone. So we have a human beings that will, if you call us, we will have a human talk to you.
Are you selling any of that data to anyone? Are you working with one of the LLMs?
No, it's very private data that customers trusting us with their commercial invoice data, like how much do they pay for these goods. So no, you can't share it. We do use it we have a lending business, so we use it for underwriting.
Oh, interesting.
But we don't, and not externally. We do our own underwriting for inventory financing. So we do use it for some smart ways. But no, I think if you found out we were selling your data, you would stop using us we would have no more data.
Well, it would be anonymized. So I also just wondered about your valuation. You kind of referenced it. You referenced having a stockpile of capital, it sounds like. You had an $8 billion valuation in 2022, sort of a frothy time. Do you think that valuation is still accurate?
Well, I've always told our team that, whenever we raised a lot of funding over the years, and after every round, I always do this talk for the whole team. I'm like, this is not our valuation. We're a private company, and this is a small group of investors who have made a bet ultimately on us, and there's the way that bet works, it's a collapsed probability distribution curve of what the possible futures look like. And in one of those futures, you might be worth 10 times that price. And in a lot of those futures, you're worth 0. And, you add up all the possible outcomes and you get to those investors got us to this price. And our job, who cares what that price is at that moment? Our job is go maximize the odds of it being worth 10 times and 100 times more than that. And so that I always, I'm not saying this now because of worried about our valuation or something. I would give this speech to the whole all hands the day after every single fundraise we ever did. And so, yeah, I don't worry about that price. I think, if you were to go public, it would probably be a lower price. 2022 was a special time in everybody's life. But even then it'd be like, well, that's the moment in time, going public. Also, your investors that's what a group of buyers who were trading today thought your stock was worth. And by the way, when your price goes way up, all you have is new investors who you've not done anything for, and want your price to be even higher than that. So I don't think you're ever going to get where you want to be on the valuation front.
Well, I know that you've put the IPO back. You said, I think you told the Journal recently that it's sort of back in the horizon. I wish we had more time because I I've also just really admire how you've kind of, you as you said, you stepped away for a little bit, you came back, you've really embraced founder mode. It sounds like you're really in the trenches with the team, which I'm sure they appreciate more than ever in this like crazy period of uncertainty for everyone.
Some of them appreciate it.
Not everyone, huh?
I call 50 of them every day, so.
That's a lot. Well, actually, if you don't mind me asking one more question,
Sure.
I do wonder, the founder mode thing I think is fascinating, but I do sometimes think, is it sustainable? Like, talking to so many people every day, day in and day out. How do you think about that?
Well, yeah, sure. I mean, I love my job. I'm very fortunate that I have a really cool job. So I don't, it's super, I think it's super sustainable. I went to 19 countries last year. Probably do like 14 this year. I mean, I will see that level of intensity. Maybe not. I don't need to sustain that forever, but yeah, I'm really lucky. I get to go to all these different places. I used to be like a backpacker with no money and have to only go to poor countries, and now I get to go to like wherever the business is and wherever it takes me. And then I meet with like global leaders and CEOs, and they take me to nice dinners and show me around their country and talk, tell me what's happening. So I'm very blessed. So I think I can do this for the next 30 or 40 years at least.
That's great. Well, Ryan, thank you so much for joining us. Really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everybody.